All right, so let's get ready for today's episode. Loading up our plunger. All right, and there we go. Okay, so what I'd like to do today is I'd like to expand on what we've done so far. On the one hand, we created a situation where we had, again, tiled index cards, and we went ahead and we had our free-floating index cards. What I'd like to do is actually move the functionality that belongs to the card to the card, right? In other words, as opposed to being functions that I'm running on the card, for example, toggling the class of the card, the borders, I'd like to be able to tell the card border on, border off, right? So basically, I want to make the card more of a self-contained object, right? In fact, it actually is an object, right? If we actually take a look at the code, right? Let's say this is the actual code that's generated by the builder, right? So it's nice, pretty code you can look at. You actually see it's actually a class. It's actually a class which is derived from panel and contains basically our various elements, right? In other words, that will actually then contain on creation of the actual panel, in this case the div, which basically has inside of it everything which we designed on the actual card, right? So remember that this is our card, this is what it looks like, right? So all of this basically translates into code that gets run at runtime, right? Okay, so the idea therefore is that we can, again, also add functionality to this as well, just like we would anything else in Lisp, right? So let's go ahead and let's explore doing that, moving the functionality to the actual card. So to do that, though, I want to give the card a file of its own. Right now, this is our main plunger file, CLOG.plunger, right? That's our, in Lisp, really the actual files don't matter per se in terms of layout of the application. They're more of a convenience for us. Packages essentially matter. Those are our larger component for being able to put together our applications. And then, of course, our smaller components are functions or classes and things like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's move to do that. Okay, so to do that, let's add our little file. Let's go ahead and we want to add this. Let's see, run this. We want to add a list file, and let's call this particular file. Okay, let's go ahead and add. We'll call it card body. Right, and that's going to contain the additional code, the functions that we're going to add to our class. Okay, I know that's not technically correct to say to add to our class in Lisp, but for most of us, we understand what we mean. Okay, whoops, I made a boo-boo. I added Lisp. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Remove. Okay, let's add again. I'm gonna have to go delete that file, obviously, that I created there by mistake. Oops, card-body. Forgot, no adding the endings. There we go. There, okay, fine. So card-body.lisp. Okay, again, it's just a blank file in this particular case that's gonna turn into our file afterwards. And let's, for example, let's get it started before anything else. Let's make sure we add in package. CLOG plunger. All right, let's go ahead and save that. Okay, let's close that for a moment. Okay, so now, by the way, just I want to show part of the reason I closed it. I could have done it. I could have just typed in a different, which particular package that we're actually located in within this file, and actually it actually picks up what package we are to some degree in here as well. But I like that everything's sort of all set up. So in package CLOG plunger, okay. But besides that, we've got that set up. Now I just wanted to show you. I know I'm spending a little extra time today talking through some things. I just want to show you what happened. Our actual file, our ASDF file, is actually being parsed and dealt with by the CLOG builder. So you'll notice here, this is our project that we have Of course, we can make some changes here as well and save this file. Because again, we're actually working with the ASDF system when we're using the project. So new CLOG. Actually, we can let's make some changes. So let's add our file. Okay, this is going to be the CLOG Plunger. That's the description for our CLOG Plunger, right? And the author is, we're going to go ahead, in this case, my version of this is going to be me, David Botten. Okay, I always prefer BSD, although since this is not a, is not a developer tool, I wouldn't, well, it kind of is a tool, then I wouldn't mind even using GPL here. But in general, anything that's that is a developer tool, something that I expect you to extend and use in your list projects, then I always make sure it's BSD. LGPL, again, I've written, I mean, you can't even imagine how many lines I've written of GPL code. And again, and the GPL has its place, but the problem is with Lisp images, it's seriously untested from a legal perspective. That what happens when you mix LGPL or GPL into a Lisp image with other things. And it's just better to get out of the whole thing. And the truth of the matter is, and my experiences of, again, we're talking like 30 years of programming, I'm going to tell you right now, people that steal, people that share. In the end of the day, I want people to be able to share what I've written and be able to extend and benefit the world. GPL essentially can be used as a tool to actually stop people from sharing as well. That's a long story that I won't get into, but the bottom line is you want your software shared, use BSD. In the end of the day, again, it's a great idea, but I don't care if some company uses my software behind the lines and makes $1 million. If that company is a thief, they're going to steal it, and if they're going to give it back to me, they give it back to me. And I got news for you, nothing's going to change that. No license is going to change that. That's just reality. Anyways, I'll step off the soapbox. And like I said, focus on what I really came here to do, which was essentially to program, and something that I should enjoy thoroughly. So anyways, like I said, there's our components, clog-plunger, card body. These are our files. So really, this entire system is being managed. Let's go ahead and make sure to save that. Okay, and then let's close that. In fact, let's go reload our project because we did make some changes to it. Not that it really changed anything practically speaking, but what ends up happening basically is these are runtime files, meaning files that are list files. So some of those files are generated. So card-clog, every time we save our clog files, right, remember our clog file is our graphical files. Those files, every time we save them, right, it's going to also produce the card.lisp file. So if you remember, card.lisp is a file that's generated, right? So modify original clog file. Don't modify this file. And that's why we can't add the functions that we're going to do now to this file, because this will get overwritten. All right, I mean, it's great reference to look at, etc., but that's not the file that we're going to use. Now, so the runtime system, basically, this is stuff that's going to be used at runtime. This actually contains the real code of our project. The design system, that essentially is all the clog files, all the additional portions, and things like that are going to generate into the runtime system. Okay, so again, just think about this. These are all in the /tools portion of our /plunger /tools. That basically those are the files that are in that part of the ASD file, the SDF file. Sorry. Well, ASD. So anyway, so here, for example, clog file card, right? So that's going to be our clog file, right? So we've actually extended ASDF to handle clog files, and that's what's going on over here. Okay, but anyways, but you don't really have to worry about the ASD file per se. If you know how to use them and modify them, great. But for the most part, like I said, you can do it in the system here. So you add list files here. When you add an additional clog file, let's say, for example, let's go ahead and add a, I don't know, let's call it test, right? So we'll go ahead and add a clog file. What's going to happen is the clog file gets created, and so does a list file that essentially pairs with it. So now we go ahead, we open up, and we add a button, right? And we go ahead and we save it, and that actually saved and also rendered, right? Remember, this is save, this is render. So we went ahead and rendered it and everything else. And now that file, test.list, actually contains the rendered version of the file we just did. So you know, actually, in this particular case, we actually have to, let's see, open up this CLOG, right? So that's show working, da, da, da. Okay, whatever. Okay, so let's go back here and close our CLOG file. Again, like I said, we don't need this, so we go ahead, we can remove it. We actually do have to remove both places. There might be reason for you to keep it, so we don't get rid of it for you. And actually, let's take view dir so we can go clean up a little bit. So we had the lisp.lisp file. We can get rid of that. Okay. And we had our test.lisp. We don't need that file. Okay. And we don't need that file. Okay, done. Okay, so we can close this. So again, so we clean up our little mess that we did over there, and like I said, we have now our card body file. All right, so let's get started moving our functionality into our actual index card. Okay, so we've opened up our new card body file, and let's move the draggable functionality first. So let's go ahead and create a def method, right? Okay, oops, def method. Okay, and let's call it make draggable. Okay, and card and index card is our class. Okay. There we go, and let's actually copy that functionality that we used, that jQuery execute. All right, let's move that into here. All right, looks good, evaluate all, perfect. Okay, and let's go back here and let's actually use our new functionality. So make draggable and card. Okay. Perfect. Let's evaluate all. Good. And let's go ahead and let's run our new project. Perfect. Okay, great. So now we've added to our class, basically our index card class, make draggable. Right, now next thing we need to do is we need to do something a little more complex, right? Let's move this selectability, right? So let's think about this for a second. So first of all, we need something to tell our cards that this can be selected. Okay, so we like make selectable. So that let's add that first, right? So let's go ahead and let's add a method. Okay, right, okay, def method, okay, make selectable, okay, same basic idea, okay, good. And to do that though, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to need to set a property, right? In other words, on our class. So let's load up our card, our index card, okay? And in our index card, we're going to add a custom slot, okay? So let's go ahead. Let's call the slot selectable, okay? P and accessor. And selectable, right? Great. Okay, let's save that. Let's run that. Make sure everything's good. Okay. So what we've done, let's take a look at the actual code, right? Go here to card.lisp, and what we've done, there's our class. Here's our selectable P, right? So let's go ahead and let's take care of that. So make selectable. So in this particular case, we will go ahead and we will, okay, set our property. In this case, we're going to do selectable P. Okay, and in this case, our card. And let's go ahead and set it to true. In fact, we have one smaller problem though, right? And that is, I have not. Good, fine. Let's go back. If you recall, in our card, I actually made a mistake. So first of all, what I made a mistake was I did not set an init form, right, of nil. And the reason is, if we don't have an initial value, when I go to check it later on, I'm going to run into a problem. It's going to be an unbound value, and that's going to create havoc for us. So make sure we've set the initial value for our selectable P to nil, which means it's not selectable by default. And now we are ready with this. So again, same thing, compile it, and actually let's go ahead and save in. Good. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. All right, so now, so we have a way to make our index card selectable. I mean, in truth, we probably could have just used that property as the means for setting it as selectable, just setting selectable P to true. But for the moment, let's keep this uniform, okay? Plus also, maybe in the future, we can make a decision whether or not we keep that as part of our index card API or not, because if it stays the way it is and we like it, we can leave it, but it could be that make selectable may actually offer some additional functionality, and we have to decide is selectable P the method that we're going to use or not. So we'll have to do based on that. Okay, so now our next thing, of course, is to actually deal with making it selectable itself, right? So to make this selectable, let's first of all, let's open up our card. And the first thing we're going to do is really just mimic exactly what was going on before, right? So if we go back over here, we know we need to add the W3 border. I guess I clipped that out before. One moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go and add it. Let's, okay, so if we go ahead and we add the border, okay, let's see, W3 dash border. All right, so we add that. Now, the next thing we're going to do is let's take a look and see. We want that on clicking, we want to toggle, right? Let's go here, add. Now, by the way, this is not a really great place to actually program. Oops, toggle, not toggle, toggle. In this case, target W3 border red. Now this is not really a great place to actually add functionality. I mean, it's pretty cool to do, but the problem with adding functionality here is that you really have a tough time editing code that's placed in the actual panel. So generally speaking, we're going to test stuff in here, but then afterwards we'll take out the code and we'll make sure that it ends up in our CLOG-body file. Or even if it's just a question of calling it out, this way we'll be able to edit it and use it a little bit easier. But again, let's go ahead and test that out. So let's close it up. Boom. Okay, toggling up. Works perfect. Okay, great. So we've added now our functionality to be able to toggle. Now, of course, we want to make that toggle event based on something a little bit more. We want to make sure that that toggling, right? He says that that takes place in such a way, right, that again, that only if the selectable property is set. So let's selectable P. Okay, let's go back to here. On click, okay, and very simple, when, right, selectable P, and done. Okay, so that'll take care of that. So that's for sure going to work out there. And let's go ahead. I always like to click again on the panel in order to make sure we're outside of the actual text. This way to ensure that it actually gets saved, because the actual events here, when you put them in, they don't save until you defocus off of the actual event that you typed in. So that's just a good little thing to note again. So what happened here? Ah, that's right, because we of course selected no, right? So that's good. So that's all right. In fact, let's change this to true. Let's give it a try, right? Fine, and there we go. Oh, what happened here? Selectable P. Selectable P. I made some mistakes someplace. Where is it? Ah, there. Okay. Well, classic mistake. Can't believe I did that. Okay. There we go. Of course, I can't use selectable. I have to use selectable P on the panel. There we go. That will work. Okay. Now I can go ahead and run it. And of course, that works because we set it for true. And then let's test it now. Right, when it is set to null, which is really what we want as the default functionality. Okay, and let's go ahead and run that. And of course, nothing happening. Perfect. And that's what we want. So let's go ahead now. Let's save it, which will also render. Okay, and let's close that up. So now we can go back to here, and we can essentially get rid of our on-click. We don't need that anymore, right? We can actually go ahead now and make selectable, right, our card, and that will also now remove the need for this as well, right? Right, okay, great, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's run our whole project. New free win. So first of all, let's check out this. So that functionality is there. And let's go ahead and remember we have our window this way. And there we go. Pretty cool, huh?